Hi everybody, this is Dee Reinhardt. I am going to be your guide this afternoon for our resume workshop. If you have problems hearing during the webinar, please dial 866-803-3878 and we will be happy to have you here through the phone lines. If you have any questions, please post them in the chat pod, and Kendra will be happy to share those with us, draw our attention to it so that we can try and get those questions answered for you during the webinar. We've got a lot of information today on resumes, and we will be happy to try and cover as much ground as we can today. If you've not taken the chance, please tell us when was the last time that you updated your resume. And I've noticed that I actually have 5 answers in there that says you're supposed to update it. The other question that we need to know about is what format is your resume? And we're going to talk about these 3 different kinds of formats. So if you can give us a budge there to let us know what kind you have, it will help us understand where we need to take our discussion a little bit further. I'm going to give you 3 more seconds to answer those poll questions, and then we're going to go to our actual webinar topic. 3, 2, 1. Here we go. So, resumes. Which one is best for me? We're going to have some question and answers with our human resources professionals, and if you want to join the conversation on Twitter, you can do so with the hashtag #ILWorkNet or #resumes. So, here we go. Leanne is a coach, and she helps people that need the help in career transition with mid-sized enterprises. So I thank Leanne for joining us today and welcome her to the conversation. Hi, Leanne.
Well, good afternoon, Dee. Thanks for having me as well.
Tell me really quickly and tell the audience what a heurist is.
A heurist is someone who guides and seeks discovery, and many of your people on this webinar are actually heurists as well because they are seeking discovery.
Very good, very good. So hopefully we all discover a little bit something, and I discovered a new word when I met you, so that's wonderful. Christy Seawall is the principal at Career Catalyst, and Christy is joining us from a conference today. So thank you very much for taking the time out of your conference to join us. We welcome you to the call. Thanks for joining us, Christy, and how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. 2 very important things going on at the same time, but I'm glad to be here.
Great, great, great.
Can you hear me okay?
I can. Let's everybody raise their hand real quick to see if they can hear Christy okay. Yep, we're doing good. We're doing good. All right. Our third presenter today is Craig Frank of Frank's Employment, right in St. Charles, Illinois. It is a full-service temporary employment agency, temporary and full-time employment agency, and Craig has taken over the family business. So we appreciate his expertise from an employer side because he not only helps place people but hires them for employers in the area. So we appreciate your time for joining us today, Craig, and welcome to the call.
Good afternoon. I hope we can give you some worthwhile pointers today.
Thank you very much. And I'm Dee Reinhardt. I am the where their customers need to find them. Today our conversation is going to be on resumes. So the first question we need to ask today is, why do we need a resume? Are they even still a viable way to represent yourself to a potential employer? So I would like to have this question answered by Craig first because he is looking at it from an employer perspective, and then I want the other two ladies to answer for me.
Well, you do need to have a resume because you need something on paper or something electronic that these people can look at. This is your marketing brochure that tells them about you. And when you're job hunting, it seems like you don't really exist unless you can give the people something that summarizes who you are and something that they can remember you by.
Great. Leanne?
I agree wholeheartedly, and the other aspect is that by having that hard copy, it's going to meet state and federal compliance requirements. And I think the issue of marketing cannot be stressed enough. It's
That's
critical.
a very good point. Very good point. Chrissy, would you like to add anything to that?
Sure. I mean, I agree. It's an essential tool in today's job market. It's still the first thing that many people ask for. Even, we know that many jobs are gotten through networking, but even when you're meeting people for networking and they're trying to help you out, they say, sure, forward me your resume. So, it is the essential tool, the most traditional tool, and the most common tool to help people find their next opportunity.
Good. I think the marketing piece is a very strong thing that needs to be reiterated for people. Yes, it talks about your accomplishments, but it also is somebody's first glance at you in most cases. Isn't that correct?
I would agree with that. I mean, a lot of the application process today is online, so many times that is their first impression of you is, the resume, whether you're filling it out in their text boxes or attaching something to it. Hopefully you're, again, doing that in conjunction with networking, but it's oftentimes is the first picture people have of you.
Right, right. Who's just starting out, like a teenager or somebody just out of college. Let's talk about these points just a little bit. Leanne, would you like to start for us?
Sure, Dee. Thanks so much. It's going to differ because obviously the experience level is different. The education differs. There may be an advantage for the younger person because they're not locked into a particular type of resume. They may be a little more forward thinking, where some of the mature candidates have been conditioned to one type of resume, and that may not work because, today's recruiters, and Craig can talk about this, they're looking for bullet points. They're not looking for a lot of text. They want to see a lot of white space. They want to quickly glance through it. And so the younger worker may have an advantage because they have been trained to write that way.
Right. Craig, would you like to add anything to that?
Well, another way to look at it from the job hunter's point of view is that if a job advertisement says that this person wants 3 to 5 years experience in the particular field, and you have a lot more than that, all of the years you have beyond that become negatives. Because if they say they want 3 to 5 years, they want 3 to 5 years, and so you need to focus on what 3 to 5 years experience you have at that particular job.
All right. One of the points on here talks about de-aging your resume. Christy, would you like to address that?
Sure. One, mistake, and we're going to get to mistakes a little later, but one mistake many more experienced workers think is that they have to put everything they've ever done on their resume. In doing that, you want to pull out the most relevant things. A lot of times, the most relevant things are the most recent things. So you don't have to, if you've had a 30-year work history, you can simply include the last 10 to 15 years. That's the most relevant. It's the most important. And, that is one way of de-aging yourself on the resume, as well as excluding the dates of any degrees that you've gotten is another way. So you want to kind of look at, as Craig said, what level of experience the employer is looking for and include the things that align you with what they're looking for.
Leanne, one point that that I see on here is telling your story. How do you tell your story in bullet points?
By highlighting your skills, your capacities, your capabilities. You can use some adjectives. It takes a little work, and there are experts like Christy and Greg who can help with that. I personally don't do the direct resume writing or that. I review them. But again, this is about marketing, and it may be talked about later on, but your resume, the purpose of your resume is to get that interview. It's not to get the job.
Right,
You want to get the interview with that recruiter, with that potential employer, and get in the door.
Exactly.
I see a question from Bonnie that's popped up. Is it okay to do a skills resume that doesn't show dates of employment, which would reveal one's age? What I recommend is you need to show dates, but only show them for the most recent 10 years or 10 to 15 years. If it's beyond that, and it's something you feel is important to mention because it's experience that will help you get this particular job, just after your first chronological and then describe what that experience is, but you don't have to put a date on it.
Do we have something? We've got an example of that in our examples later, don't we? I think somebody
so.
actually has that. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Next question we've got are, what are the key elements of any resume? We've got some bullet points on the screen, but how important is it to have an objective? How important is it to have a summary or a personal mission statement? And does it matter what order the things are on the resume? And is there anything that we should not include on a resume? How about Craig? Why don't you start?
Well, my opinion is that I like an objective and not necessarily a summary. I like an objective because when resumes come to me, it's not necessarily clear what job they're applying for. If they've been an accountant all their life, okay, I can pretty well figure out they want to be an accountant, but if they've had a couple different positions, I need some guidance on what do you want. But don't make it fluff. Keep it short and sweet and just tell me what you want. My opinion on a professional summary is that the resume itself is a summary, and I don't need a summary of a summary. However, some people use the summary to sort of do double duty and give me the objective also. And so if it's well done, that can work fine.
Good.
So this is Christy. Yeah, I'll jump in here because Craig and I have slightly different opinions here, and I think both are valid, but it will give the listeners a perspective, a broader perspective. So I think in general, an objective is not necessary, and I try to incorporate it into the summary of qualifications or the professional summary section. That works really well if you're, in a career that is traditional, moving in the same direction, you're looking for that next opportunity in the same career field. If someone is a career like I'm objective organizational development consultant, when they didn't maybe have that as part of their title history throughout the resume. But the benefit to a summary of qualifications, I feel, is that it clearly indicates to the hiring manager or the recruiter maybe, the top 3 things that you bring to the table that make you a good fit for the job. So I don't know that you can, with only listing the experience, can really have that clear picture. And you'll see a couple of examples that I've provided that include a professional summary. So it's up to you to kind of assess that and see what works best for you, because I think different cases call for different things.
I think Christy and I would both agree, though, that whether it's a summary or an objective, don't make it fluff. get to the point, give specific keywords that tell us what we need to know.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of summary qualifications are fluff, and so we are in agreement on that, whereas we try to make ours very specific. So.
Right. The big thing on a resume is make sure that an employer understands what's in it for them. How can you solve their problems, right?
Correct.
Correct, and that goes back to if you've done any research about that industry, that particular corporation or entity, so that there'll be something there that you write that's going to pick up their interest, where they're going to say, hey, this person did a little more digging.
Right, right. Very good. Let's see what we have coming up next. What are the biggest mistakes that people make? What are they doing that's not getting them that interview, Leanne?
And again, I'm coming from a marketing perspective, because whether you're out selling, in sales, we're all in sales. We're all selling ourselves to somebody. And you need to attract attention and begin to build the relationship. So if your resume looks like everybody else, it is not going to stand out in the crowd, and it's going to go in the circular file.
Yes. Craig, what kind of mistakes?
It's really difficult to write a good resume, and many people agonize over it. And by the time they've written that first one, they're done with it, they're sick of it, and they don't want to have to do it anymore. But if you write one master resume in your computer, and it has all of the things you can think of that you've ever done, but then don't use that one. Use that to pull information from as you see a particular job, so you can customize your resume for the position you're applying for.
That's a great point. That's a great point. Christy, what would you tell people that are their biggest mistake that you try to help them avoid? And we're getting to avoiding mistakes coming up.
Okay. So one of the things that I notice is, when people are writing their resume, they think of it purely as a historical document, which of course it is, because it's, documenting what you've done in the past. But I try to work with my candidates to look at it as a forward-looking document. You have to first determine what it is you want to do, then analyze that and look at your past experience to pull out those things that are most relevant to a potential employer. So that's why it's so important to customize your resume for different opportunities. So it's really, dual document. It should be very future focused, where you're painting the picture for the employer that you have the skills needed to do the job they need done. The second one is that they tend to list job responsibilities versus listing their accomplishments. So when you have maybe 3 business analysts at the same company, they all have the same title. If you list your job responsibilities, they're probably all going to be similar. But if you focus on what you accomplished in the job, what you contributed, the difference you make, that's what helps your resume stand apart from other people's. So that's the thing I try to focus on with people, is their accomplishments and their contributions while in a job.
We had a question from the audience about the pictures on resumes.
Pictures? Yes,
yes,
the Department of Labor does not allow a potential employer to have a picture of a potential job applicant in their files.
All right. Craig, tell me about what this is.
Well, believe it or not, this was one person's submission as a resume. It actually had their name on top, but this is a great example of everything that's wrong with somebody's attempt to write a resume, or at least to market themselves. You can see it's poorly written. It's cryptic. You say, geez, I don't even like this person based on the way they write. But there's one point in particular that I want you to take away from this, and that is that this person is indicating it's all about themselves. how much pay do I want, how far am I willing to drive, and and a few other things. But that's exactly what you don't want to do. It's all about what you can do for the company and how you can help that company by doing a good job for them.
True. So now, we just had a huge mistake that we just saw on the screen. How can people avoid mistakes on their resumes? Chrissy
So,
answer me on this one.
I'm sorry. So one of the things I talked about earlier was, focusing on your accomplishments. One way that you can do that is by what we refer to as star stories. It's a DDI term, and that's trying to think back through your work experience and think about those big projects you were proud of, and think about this. It's an acronym, so the S stands for situation, the T stands for task, the A for actions, and the R for results. And that's going to be too much to put on your resume, but it will be good preparation for interviews later on to create those stories. And then you look at those stories and you pretty much boil it down to the action and results. So you want your the experience section of your resume to be full of contributions, as I said, results, metrics when possible. But if it's not possible to get a metric on there, try to at least focus on the qualitative results. So a lot of times when I'm looking at people's resumes and working with them, they'll have a bullet point on there, and it sounds very rude, but I'll say, so what? Like, why was that important? What did that do for the company? And by looking at those types of questions,
Congruent between your resume and what's on social media sites.
It's so important because LinkedIn currently is the #1 social media site where executives, recruiters go and check people out. I saw a term today from Seth Godin talk backlisting, meaning whatever is out there on the web is out there on the web, and people can check you out real quick. And he gave the example, it wasn't a resume, but I think he must have had some sort of documentation and went on the web and checked out this person that he wanted to hire, and there were some inappropriate pictures. That's not a good thing. You could have you could have some inappropriate words on your LinkedIn profile. You might have stretched the truth. That's not a good thing. So you really have to have that congruency. It may not be one for one, because on LinkedIn you can do a far more extensive summary than you would have on a one-page resume. But
exactly.
If you're saying you worked at ABC company and that was your current employer, you want to make sure it's the same current employer on your LinkedIn profile.
Exactly. Very good. Let's talk about what are some alternatives to a traditional resume. And I think, Leanne, some of this has to do with what you're talking about, marketing.
Yeah, and
so if you would,
well, you can have that portfolio. I mean, if you're an artist, if you're an IT person, what you've done. Another one that we don't have on here is a YouTube video. People can put a YouTube video and they can link it to their LinkedIn profile just as well. The letters of recommendation, those are critical. They may not be given at the time, but having those, asking people, would you recommend me? And I encourage young high school students to do the same thing. Ask always for letters of recommendation.
yes.
And start building that portfolio of recommendations.
Who can they get recommendations?
Are involved in social services, whether it's the Y, whether it's even a babysitter, they can talk about how responsible they were.
Very good.
I think you can get one from a neighbor. If the kid has mowed their lawn or shoveled their walk or something, they could probably get a letter of reference from that person.
And that always goes a long way to speak to their work ethic and their character building, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
A teacher.
Yes, very good.
teachers, coaches.
When people have lost a job, I recommend that they go to that employer or supervisor and get a letter of recommendation as soon as possible. Before they leave is best, but don't wait. Don't say, oh, I'll get it if I ever need it. Well, it'll be too late by then.
Correct. Correct. We mentioned YouTube a little bit ago, just a moment ago. What are some of the best online options for job seekers? What can they use? And Craig, I want you to tell me, how do you feel about somebody that would send you a creative alternative to a traditional resume?
It depends on the field they're in, the type of position they're looking for. If they're an accountant or some traditional mainline business function, you've got to stick pretty much to the established norms. But if you're an artsy person or a graphic artist or some more of a creative marketing advertising person,
or a social media strategist, right?
Oh, yeah, there you go. Well, then you better have something creative on social media, or you just blew it.
Right.
So,
right.
This is Christy. I think in most circumstances, it shouldn't be considered an alternative to a resume. It should be considered in addition to a resume. So going to the next step. Because again, I still think that a traditional resume is needed in most circumstances.
It should supplement the documentation of the resume. And I don't necessarily know if a bio would be a good thing. And I think it's just like what Craig said, it is specific to the job you're applying for.
Sure. We have a question from the audience about she's seen statements from employers on resumes. What are your thoughts on adding the statements to a resume?
I've seen it more on cover letters that go with resumes. But if it's written well, I think it can be outstanding to use a statement from a former employer.
I think it's.
Is that what you're talking about, like a reference statement or a quote from an employer on a resume?
I'm not sure. Yes, Cindy says yes.
Okay, so I have actually done that in my summary of qualifications, rarely, but I have used it on occasion as one of the bullet points to draw attention. It's a third-person perspective of what the employee has to offer a potential employer. So, I think depending on the circumstance or the quote, it makes a lot of sense. But where I think those things are best put is in your LinkedIn profile and really making your LinkedIn profile robust and asking former employers, peers, vendors, customers to post something, a recommendation on LinkedIn. Because the one thing you want to do on your LinkedIn profile, if you're putting it in your contact information on your resume, is to make sure when they go there, they see different and more information than just a repeat of your resume. Otherwise, you're causing them to go an extra step and they're not getting any value from it. So, for the most part, I encourage people to get their recommendations posted to LinkedIn, and then on your resume, refer people to your LinkedIn profile, and they'll see all these wonderful things other people are saying about you.
That's a
very
great
true.
suggestion. There's another place to put it, and it's in what I call a marketing letter. It's sort of like a cover letter, but it's a standalone letter that you could send without your resume. Where somehow you don't necessarily have to send them a resume right off the bat. You can send them a marketing letter that's just a quick summary of your highlights. And you don't put times and dates and all of that in there. But within that, if you have a good recommendation sentence or paragraph from a former employer, that really gives it a lot of punch.
Yes, it does. Right or wrong, I actually used 3 of my LinkedIn recommendations. I just copied and pasted it at the end of my resume. And it's to me, it just makes a statement about my recommendations without having to actually give them a person to call. So it's just something that I kind of did because I happen to be in marketing, and I thought it would be a good idea.
It can be a great page two to your resume.
And that's exactly what it is on mine. We have a question from Sergio that says he doesn't understand the reasoning why a YouTube video is okay but not a photo. And I think I know the answer, but Craig, would you answer that for me?
Well, I was referring to people that put a photo on their resume, and that's something that I'm not allowed to have. But a YouTube link, that's something that's off in the cloud, and it's not something I have in my possession. So you can get away with it there.
Right, right. And that's just like with any of those other profiles, right?
Right.
And just real quick, as long as we're talking about LinkedIn, is to have your photo on LinkedIn, make sure it's professional. You know, go invest the money to have a photographer take it if you can, because there already a lot of research out there saying if your photo isn't on your LinkedIn profile, people are less likely to reach out to you or ask to be connected with you.
Correct. There's a question here that says, can a LinkedIn URL be included in my resume? And very definitely yes. My caveat on this, and I am a LinkedIn on your resume. Please make sure that it's 100% plus if you're going to do that.
The other thing you can do with that URL is you can customize it. So usually it has like, LinkedIn.in or, /in, and then your name, and then lots of things after it, numbers and things that make it difficult. You can actually go in and edit that to, just your name or something that would be easier to put on your resume.
Correct. If the listeners need more information, we do have a great link on IllinoisWorkNet.com